Actually,
Ini apa sih?
The music tonight is lovely.
Special music. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome. A few people have mentioned they wouldn't be here tonight. Had a text from Sally and Bill saying that they've just missed the Clothiers Creek turn-off and they're on their way to Pottsville. So that they wouldn't be getting here. Justin and Kirsten not coming. Justin said he's had some dental work done, so he's going to rest home. Also, John and Susan said they wouldn't be coming. Also, Sam said he wouldn't be coming this evening. Ivan, was there anyone else down in the car park?
No.
Okay. All good. So let's settle into our evening with our meditation. Taking this time to sit and settle. Having arrived here, arrived into the now, having taken our place, our seat, and settling our mind into this present moment, knowing, consciously letting go of the has-been, letting go of engaging into thoughts about the might-be, and exercising mindful attention in the present. Developing a calm, objective, receptive, attentive knowing, practicing being present. Meditation is practicing being present in a calm, simple way, centering attention in on the present moment through noticing and feeling each soothing, therapeutic, life-giving breath. Making the breath the most important thing that we're noticing, more than thoughts that always relate to self in some way or another. But developing a calm, peaceful presence, a deep knowing, a sensitivity, a refinement of mind. Allowing the mind to settle into inner stillness, silence, spaciousness. Firstly, feeling into the body sense, the sense of the body sitting, awareness of a few contact sensations, feet against the floor, body connecting with the chair, cushion, or stool, hands resting gently in the lap. Maybe some cool air connecting with our face. Subtle light coming in through the closed eyelids. The background sounds of early evening. And choosing to not engage into any thought, but to give attention to the breath, the naturally occurring breath, receiving, relinquishing, allowing, letting go, noticing each ongoing breath, leading the mind to ease and peace, joy and contentment. Developing this calm alertness, refined focus, collectedness, concentration. Please help yourself to some tea and biscuits. Clint, can I get you to turn the urn off, please? Thanks. Someone on the Sunday retreat day left their little thermos here. Up the back if it belongs to anyone. This evening, I'd like to start with a short Buddhist chant, particularly for Russell. It's a funeral chant, so a short chant. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dhammino upajitva nirujanti te sang upasamo sukho. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dhammino upajitva nirujanti te sang upasamo sukho. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dhammino upajitva nirujanti te sang upasamo sukho. The translation of that from the Pali language is when I find it. Formations, truly, they are transient. Their nature to arise and then to cease. Having arisen, then they pass away. Their calm cessation, that is happiness. So that's chanted 3 times. Formations, truly, they are transient. So all things transient. Their nature to arise and then to cease. Having arisen, then they pass away. Their calm cessation, that is happiness. So as a follow-on from reflections from 2 weeks ago, because last week we reflected on a bit of a debrief and sharing from the retreat day. which was on the 19th. But 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that I'd come that morning from sitting with Russell on the Wednesday for his voluntary assisted dying, and which went very, very peacefully. So he was there with his wife Sharon and myself, and then two nurses, very sort of pleasant, calm, tranquil nurses that attended and performed the assisted dying. After which I did some special chanting, and then did an all-night vigil, meditation vigil, sitting beside the bed. Russell's body was on the bed, and until the next morning, and then did some more chanting, and then after that, the funeral parlour people arrived and respectfully removed Russell's body, which was then cremated on Tuesday. Hence this special, what do we call this? Service booklet, yeah, which Sharon herself put together. The way she was very instrumental in organising the whole service, and putting together a whole lot of photographs and choosing the music. In fact, the music which we had as Russell was lying, waiting, and was talking with me, and then sort of waiting for the nurses to arrive, was the music which I was playing this evening, which I think is called Tranquil Forest, Forest of Tranquility. And then also, as people were arriving to the crematorium, then we had this music playing as well. And so that in this order of service, Sharon had also chosen a Buddhist chant. I'd left a copy of these Buddhist chants with her, and she sent this to me, and she'd actually typed up and put in here the verses on loving kindness, the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. So for the service, I chanted the verse in the Pali language, as I did on the Sunday for my birthday. And then I had everybody read out the English translation, which was meaningful, and everyone sort of connected through that special words. The actual service took place at down the road here at the Eberron Crematorium. Anyone been down there? No? I've driven by it many, many, many times on my way to Kingscliff or back from Kingscliff. It's just as you go over the motorway, and then down on the left-hand side to look down and see sort of gardens. And I've always, in a way, wanted to go down and have a look at the gardens. And even asked Hannah, "Oh, maybe we should go down and have a look." And, "Oh, there's so much work to be done here." And but so I had a chance to go down there for this cremation and service, and it's a lovely, lovely place. Beautiful landscape gardens, and lovely trees, and little areas, and it has a pond that's huge, probably an acre or so of pond with sort of lilies and ducks and so forth. So it's sort of a really, really beautiful place. And the actual you call it a chapel is more like it's an old wooden building that I think someone said it used to be a school building. That's there. And so there was about 100 people on a Tuesday morning for that. And so Sharon had asked me to preside over the process, the proceedings, and be in a way the MC, or I suppose you call it, or this is a better word for it. And Russell's casket was out the front, and it was covered with the quilt that his body was covered with on the night that we did the all-night vigil in his bedroom. And also Sharon had delivered that to me, and also his Buddha image, which is about this big, lovely Burmese Buddha image, delivered to me last week to be able to then take over there and to set up, which I did in there. Beautiful florist arrangements of native flowers and so forth. This is one of them. There was about 5 of these on top of the casket. The place, the chapel, has 4 screens in it, so that there was photographs projected up onto that. And then also during the proceedings, I invited people to come out, and there was a couple of baskets of sort of like these sort of twigs and things, and people then come up and then put a twig on the casket and sort of say their sort of goodbye and so forth to Russell in that way. And Sharon also gave a really good eulogy, talking about their whole life together since they met when they were, I think she was 17, he was 19. So they spent 54 years together, and didn't have any children. They'd chosen not to have children, but to focus on plants, and they worked for the environment and nature and so forth. And a lot of people that were there had known them for many, many years. They've been living out of Lymptonwood for pretty much all their life, having come down from Brisbane. And so that there was a lot of memories, a lot of feelings that were there, and a very good send-off for Russell, befitting a person that's given a lot to the community. And I mentioned that his legacy will live on in thousands of plants that he's propagated and looked after, and that have gone out to nurseries all over the place. And there's a plant that's been named after him that he was able to was endangered, and he sort of discovered it again and was able to sort of propagate it and get it going. So that's something quite special, so that people can continue to appreciate what he's done through that sort of preservation of nature and care for species that were otherwise endangered through deforestation and logging and so forth. So it was wonderful to be able to be supportive for him and Russell and others, both in being present with him when he died, and also then being able to preside over the funeral service. So it's special place out there, and I don't mind going out there myself when the time comes. It's got to be somewhere. But it brought up reflections for me in the context of Buddhist practice. As I mentioned some time ago, Maranasati, mindfulness of death, mindfulness of dying, that which comes to us all, that is something which we tend to not want to be particularly aware of or reflect upon, but the more we're able to be aware of the fact of it, the truth of it, the reality of it, then there's less fear about it. It's more of a sense of accommodating it as something which will come, will happen, as it happens to people that we know, people that are dear to us. We've probably all had someone that's been close to us that has died, and so that it's something that brings to mind the fact of our own mortality. And I think that's one of the important things about this. And I was thinking that as I was sitting there in the chapel, 100 odd people, I could see that most of them were older people that obviously knew Russell and Sharon, and there was a few younger people there, but majority, 80, 90, 95% were, say, 50, 60 plus. And I was considering that they've probably all been to funerals before. It does happen as we get older. Not just grandparents, but parents and uncles and aunties, and down the track, cousins and siblings and so forth. That's what happens. But I was wondering how aware are people, even people in this audience, of bringing it back to oneself that, okay, sometime or other, that may be my body in that casket out the front there. And that's okay. That's okay. It's supposed to happen like that. And in many ways, it's better if it happens like that than in some other way that maybe isn't so sort of pleasant, sort of lost at sea or lost in the national park somewhere, or but in that way. And certainly as with what happened on Tuesday, it was a sense of a gathering, a collection. And I said to people, it's yes, we come together to connect, to reflect, to remember, to remind, to share in not just the grief of a loss, but in the celebration of a life that's been well lived, a life that has been of importance to us all in various ways, and that there's many learnings that can come from this. And ended with that chant that I just chanted, and also the reflection that Russell is offering a teaching to us now, that of the impermanence, the uncertainty of life, and that at some time that what has happened for Russell will also be happening for us as well. And that's just the fact and way of things, the truth of things. Which I also said before that, which is why he was interested in Buddhism, a man of science, a man of nature, very much appreciative of the facts of nature, the arising, the living, and the passing of nature. And so now he's having expressed that himself, which is very much the Buddha's teachings, the reality, truth of the way of things. And to be aligned to that, it brings harmony, brings ease, and a sense of calming, as opposed to reacting to that, being in denial of it, being in distraction of it. But being aligned to it is very, very important. But again, to consider that when we are made aware of someone's death, and then it's also a sense of, okay, well, it's a reminder to live well ourselves, because it's going to happen for these bodies. It's going to get to the point where these bodies are no longer capable of sustaining life, and that we need to sort of let them go, and the mind, life force, energy can move on to whatever needs to be happening next, and for that to be appreciated as a reality. But again, in the meantime, to live as mindfully, consciously, wisely, caringly as we can. It's like the last words of the Buddha as he was lying down, dying at the age of 80. His last words weren't talking about the bliss of nibbana, enlightenment. His last words were, all things are impermanent. Realize your freedom with earnestness. So sort of as a sort of a invitation to not be careless, to make the most of one's life. And in a way, the motivation to live well is death. It's an interesting fact that motivation to live mindfully, live consciously, live in the present moment is the fact of death. The opposite. But that's often what it takes for people to sort of wake up and go, okay, well, every moment is precious. Every moment of every breath of life is precious. There's a Thai saying in the Thai language. It goes, "Rao Mai ruwa, pruni jaben wan mai, re jaben chat mai. Translation is, none of us really know whether tomorrow will be the beginning of our new day or the beginning of our new life. Hence, I died last night, and so new life tomorrow. That's the fact. That's what we live with. Which again is why it can be a very important reflection in the context of practice, spiritual practice, Buddhist practice, to be aware of, yes, impermanence, but also of maranasati, death and dying. And it helps us sort of cut away a lot of the pettiness, small-mindedness, being caught up in worldly issues, concerns that ultimately aren't really that important, and to make the moment meaningful by being present for it, being mindful of it, and not engaging the moment through the three ills, greed, anger, ignorance, but through generosity, kindness, and wisdom. That becomes a life of worth, a life well lived. So certainly for myself, it was an honor, a privilege to have met Russell and Sharon, and to have spent time with him. He was a client, so he came to me for sessions over the sort of regularly over the course of 2 years. And whilst it, the sadness is that I didn't get to spend more time with him, I would have liked to meet him earlier and learn from him, because he was a walking encyclopedia, particularly on plants and rocks and minerals and so forth. And also sad that he that I didn't get to have him longer in my life beyond this particular time. Would have been great if he'd lived longer, but his body wasn't going to sustain life any longer than what it did, and that's part of the acceptance of the reality of things. So for yourselves, I just thought to put that out there as again a bit of a reflection, and see if you also have any considerations around life and death, and also the motivation to make one's life more meaningful whilst we have it.
John, I guess for me, as I've been learning more about Buddhism, it's how can I make the most of the rest of this life, but also, how can I guess, generating good karma and preparing for making my next life, one that's hopefully set up to continue learning the Dharma and to progress towards enlightenment, if it's not something I can attain in this lifetime. So, do you think that way as well, that it's okay, make the most of this life, but also to prepare yourself for the next life, to make that one a better life, with more opportunity to learn the Dharma?
Very much so. So ideally that one realizes ultimate freedom in this life, so the mind doesn't get born back into this learning situation. The learning's done, but also an awareness that if the mind still has some degree of attachment and misperception of the reality, truth of things, that the mind, so to speak, will be reborn in a situation where one can continue that learning journey. And that's where I was speaking to Russell just a few minutes before he died, that sense of directing his mind in a way for letting go, but also that possibility of the next life of learning, and either in this form with one of these slow spinning energy bodies, or a faster spinning energy body as a being of light, celestial being.
Do you think once you've understood the Buddha's teachings, that your next life you wouldn't regress from that, as in you'd be very open to to that as far as like continuing that journey rather
Hopefully.
than taking a step backwards.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
Hopefully so.
If
yeah.
you've been living, a virtuous life and
Mm.
generating good
Mm.
karma, that
Yeah.
you would hopefully kind of pick up where you left off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And even just as a bit of self-disclosure, when I was a child, I wondered why did I get born to these weird people?
Mm.
Dad's into yoga and meditation and chanting and so forth, and an embarrassment at times. But then when I had my sort of opening or awakening, and sort of had a sense of, I know what I need to do. I need to be a Buddhist monk. That's what I've been. I knew there was something that I'd forgotten that I needed to do. That what was it? And when thought finally stopped, there was just a deeper knowing there. It's like, oh, I have to continue to be a Buddhist monk, as if I was picking up where I left off 17 years earlier. Now I know why I got reborn to these people, into a Buddhist family. It's good karma, not bad karma. Meg, for you, given that you work with people that are in situations where they're potentially dying, and no doubt you've witnessed people dying, does that sort of, how does that affect you in terms of perception of death and dying and your own mortality, and also motivation for living in a really conscious way?
It's actually pretty interesting because I did do a little bit of work in palliative care. I found the process very rewarding to be a part of somebody's life when they're coming towards the end of their life. And I think there's a huge amount of kind of like joy that you get from helping somebody to be relieved of suffering and kind of give them a bit of peace. Like you sort of feel a sense of wellness after that has happened, even though that sounds very bizarre. The thing that was interesting when you were just talking about understanding the impermanence of things, when I started doing that job, because a lot of the people who I dealt with were elderly or had terminal illnesses of which I had never suffered, I felt a little bit detracted from it in terms of I didn't really see so much that it was going to be something that affected me, because I never had to care for somebody who reflected me to myself. It wasn't until I read I May Be Wrong, which was a book about a Buddhist monk, that I realized that that was the time where it really kind of came home to me that death comes to everyone. And that was probably one of the first times that I started to think a little bit more with equanimity about the fact that death will come, but I don't have to be afraid of it. And I think prior I had sort of thought more that I didn't want to think about the end of my life because there's some fear and unknown there, even though I had cared for people at the end of their life and I knew what I would like it to look like at the end of my own life. But now I feel a little bit more at peace that I know it will happen, but I don't actually have to be afraid of it. Once that happens, you're much more open to leaning into thinking about it.
Yeah, that's good. And certainly that's what I mentioned 2 weeks ago, that yes, generally people are afraid of death, and particularly afraid of dying, and dying in pain and indignity, but with this voluntary assisted dying, it helps to relieve a lot of that. And knowing that it's out there as a possibility, then that sort of helps to allay the fear that people are maybe young and that maybe there's decades before that's ever going to happen. But it's like, okay, well, if it comes to that point in my life and there's a terminal illness there, then I can be relieved of the pain and indignity by that particular option.
And I have met some older people who think about it more than people do when they're younger, but they almost think about it to the point of practicing that the last moment is about to come, and they're very okay with it. And I find that those people towards the end of their life are incredibly calm and quite grateful for the moments that they have in each day, because they've practiced the idea that it will end, as if they've accepted that it will end.
I think that that's a really important and significant point. I've done work with both the managers of Wedgetail Retreat, the previous manager and the current manager as well, coming for supervision. And we've spoken about like the need to maybe put together a type of workshop or course for people to prepare for death in the same way that people prepare for birth. You know, you go to your birthing classes and do your breathing and sort of have things prepared, your music that's going to happen or whatever, so that a couple is prepared for that event to happen. Well, what about preparing for the event of death as well, particularly not just some of the externals, but more the internal, in terms of setting the mind right, being able to have a calm, clear mind, let go of having sort of let go of forgiveness and so forth, and sense of making one's peace, and so that it's there as like on-call type of mental process that's been established so that one can engage it. Ideally that at that time, obviously sometimes people die suddenly and it doesn't happen like that, but if there is more of a process of it occurring, then to be in the right space for it. Yvonne?
Yeah, this it reminds me, I'm a little bit familiar with like samurai philosophy, and they would meditate on different ways to die before going into battle. And I believe the Navy SEALs have adopted some of this psychology as well.
Right.
Because they found that the soldiers, when they get into the heat of battle, they would often freeze up or make really bad decisions because they feel overwhelmed with fear and things like this. So yeah, they would think about all the different ways they could die before approaching these situations, and hence when it arrived, they would approach it with greater clarity.
Interesting. Peter?
John, was been Nong Papong, and in the sala, there's a skeleton there. Are you familiar?
Yes.
There's a skeleton hanging there, and a girl there, I gather she was about 35, and there's a plaque underneath it. It said she committed suicide. She was a mother, and the family gave the body and the skeleton to the monastery. And I sat there in the afternoons, had beautiful meditations there. But also, when I've spoken to people and reading, one of the issues for Westerners with Buddhism is this whole issue around rebirth. Because, I mean, for me, myself, I believe a lot, follow everything in the teachings, I believe in it, but the whole issue around rebirth, I've got an open mind on. But I understand that it's quite common with Westerners, because we come from a different culture and a different perspective, that people can not fully understand the Buddhist way.
Sure. I think that like the skeleton, I spent quite a bit of time with the husband of the skeleton and also the daughter as well. The daughter, Dukata, she would come to the monastery on a regular basis, and a lovely young girl, and she actually came to Australia and studied at university here. But Buddhist monasteries, often forest monasteries especially, at times they will have a skeleton displayed as a reflection of the fact and truth of things, and also so that people aren't so afraid of that as well, given that we're all hanging off one. The framework. And with the I think there's probably a slow growing, even scientific appreciation of the idea of rebirth. Sure, Western culture has been very, very physically based, but with the invent of these sorts of things, that you can then put a new iPhone against the old one, and all the information goes into the new one without even any copper wire attached. It's like, wow, energy transformation, energy information into a new body, a new phone. And also that the energy information can get sent to anywhere, but to the right. We can send a text or a photograph to the right phone, one of probably billions on the planet. It goes to the right one. So why not the energy information of this life force go to the next right situation? So our technology is starting to sort of not so much catch up, but also to display these understandings that have been known for several thousand years, particularly in Buddhism.
I can just say, I have a niece who lived in Thailand for many years and worked with a girl who actually was killed on a motorbike. And Jackie, my niece, had worked with her for about 10 years, and she went to the funeral, and a Buddhist funeral, and she was crying there. And the people came up, the family came up and said, Jackie, why are you crying? This is not a sad event. This is a joyous event.
Yeah,
She's moved on.
Yeah.
And she said she was the only one there crying. I've never been to a Buddhist funeral. But
Yeah, and that's becomes an appreciation, so that because sometimes people, they feel they're supposed to cry. You go to a funeral, you're supposed to cry. You're supposed to show that you're sad. If you're not crying, then what's wrong with you? Don't you feel a loss? And in a way, the crying is often about the loss. I'm crying because I feel a loss, because I'm attached to that person, as opposed to feeling that, wow, the person's sort of free from the limitations of that body, going on to the next situation for learning. It's a bit like, we go to school and there's people in our class, and then one of the kids in the class, they're gone. Where are they gone? Well, they've gone to maybe a better school, or they've been put into the class above because they're very bright. So it's a good thing, not sort of, we might grieve, oh, where's my friend gone? But it's more, they've gone to a better place.
We should be happy for them instead of sad for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
John, today's the day that the Buddha was cremated, right? I believe.
Cremated. Okay. No, I didn't.
I've got a little calendar, and it says that today was the day he was cremated.
Right. Because obviously, the full moon of May is when he died. So if he was then cremated several days after, then maybe today's the day. There we go. Significant reflections this evening. So we can certainly over time have more reflections around Maranasati. I think it's an important thing to become more aware of and more open to and more reflective of and appreciative of, and as a motivation for mindfulness and living with more clarity and joy in life, joy at being alive, so that we can continue with those over time. But thank you for coming out this evening, and have a mindful evening, and see you next time.